Matt Boldy called game, and the Wild pick up a huge 2 points against the New Jersey Devils. Plus, who's coming out of this lineup when Kirill Kaprizov's ready to return? We discuss today on Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked on Sports Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks, as always, for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Just a reminder, you can find Locked on Wild in every episode we have to offer on YouTube or your favorite podcast platforms. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on anything we've got the rest of the season. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, Jayden Homuth joins us as we recap a 2-1 win over the New Jersey Devils. We'll also talk about the lineup and who will be the odd man out with players ready to return, whenever that may be. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider, and as mentioned, we're joined today by Jayden Homuth, the first place Minnesota Wild after taking down the New Jersey Devils. Jayden, first off, what'd you think of the game? Pretty back and forth, pretty tight, but pretty entertaining and a good way for the Wild to pick up two big road points.
Yeah, in some ways you could say that it was a boring game, or some ways you could say it was a high entertaining game. But I think my major takeaway was the fourth line struck again. Been on an absolute heater. Reeves didn't get his normal goal, but Shaw got a nice little tuck after he took the puck from behind the net. And then Matt Boldy struck again also. Like, anyone could have bet on that. But I think it was a great game. I also think Gus got robbed of the star of the game to Vita Vanacek. But yeah, I think that this was a great way to pick up 2 points, especially getting in on the road against a team that is second in their division and also had a chance to jump over a team to get forced. And yeah, it was a great way it was a good statement win, I think, especially a team without Spurgeon last minute and a team without Kaprizov.
Yeah, the wins continue to pile up with some of the biggest players on this team not in action. And I think statement win, I think that's a really good way to put it, because you beat one of the legitimate contenders in the Eastern Conference in their barn. But I think it just underscores the Wild did all the little things in this one to come away with the win. They were physical. They handled the face-off battle in this game, which is the first time they've done that in a long time. And they did all the little things that they needed to do, including in overtime, just playing more of a possession type style of OT and just trying to kind of pick their spots more against a Devils team that was trying to fly. And really, they did a fantastic job, I thought, of just kind of navigating the chances that the Devils had. They were going to get opportunities, but they did a good job of navigating them and forcing the Devils to go through some stretches where they didn't get looks on Gus. It was a really good, I thought, defensive effort. That continues to be a huge thing for this team, and top to bottom, it seemed like everybody that was in played a huge role.
Yeah, that going back to what you said about that possession, that overtime felt like it was never going to end, or we were destined for another shootout. And it seems like in a lot of overtimes, we just can't buy a goal. And so seeing Matt Boldy very slowly glide down the ice to get that goal was pretty good to watch. But yeah, I think that trying to match the Devils' pace would not have worked tonight. So sticking to that defensive focus really helped. And the Devils had a lot of unlucky bounces, like Timo Meier right off the post, which led to the Matt Boldy breakaway. Yeah, every game has bounces. Every game well, every game has bounces, just like this Dallas Star and Kraken game. Dallas did score to make it 4-3, but it was called back for goaltender interference off of a bounce. So, let's see, about 4 minutes away from maintaining first place in the Central. But
That's
yeah,
what we like. That's what we like to see. Special teams wise, I wanted to discuss this a little bit too, because penalty kill kind of got some of their swagger back and really made life difficult for that Devils power play. But the Wild power play is still kind of trying to get some things figured out. Are you concerned at all about the Wild power play going forward, or are we just seeing a unit that is trying to kind of figure out how to do it without the engine, of course, and Kaprizov?
I think I'm not going to be concerned yet. I think I'll be concerned if Kaprizov comes back and it continues to go the way it's gone, because you can't like take football for example. You can't take the starting quarterback out and say, "Oh, is it going to be concerning if you can't put up your regular points per game with your starting quarterback?" I don't think that that's something you can really worry about, because you know that you have your main guy coming back, and I feel like once he comes back, Zuccarello is going to click again, and like you could tell he's missing Kaprizov on the power play, and I think once Kaprizov gets back on that power play, it's going to be back to how it was.
Filip Gustavsson, that is, picks up the win after having lost his last two starts. Although, as we talked about before we hit record, I think that Boston game takes on a completely different complexion if those two goals don't end up being overturned. That just was such a deflating kind of momentum killer for the Wild in that game. And so if that game looks a little different, then maybe we're not talking about Gustavsson in a little bit of a skid coming into this game. But he was great all night, maybe fighting it a little bit early on with just seeing the puck, but he really recovered from that and was just sensational down the stretch.
Yeah, it was early in today's game. There was a couple times where he would catch the puck and spike it into the ice. And Michael Russo said on Twitter that the goalie coach made a joke about how it looked like he was playing with two blockers in the first period. But I really don't think that he even had a bad stretch. I think, yeah, he had two straight losses. But that Boston game, like we were talking about, getting a 2-goal lead taken away and then Boston tying it at the end of the period really hurts. And then after Boston takes the lead, scoring immediately after just to get it taken away again is such a momentum killer. So I think that Gus is just fine. I don't think he's really, besides that Arizona game where he finally looked human, I think he's still right back on track. And then again tonight, 47 saves on 48 shots against Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Timo Meier. I think he's still just fine.
Yeah, he's doing all right. And his goal saved above expected was, I think, 3.5, which is
3.53. Yes,
absurd.
Great.
So he
and
did.
then 14 for 14 on high danger chances too.
That's to quote Robin Williams from Good Will Hunting. That's the good stuff. That's what you want is those high danger saves and the goal saved above expected. So all in all, a fantastic win for the Wilds. They now have 41 in the season. They now have 90 points. And barring the outcome of the Stars Kraken game, which we'll keep an eye on as we go through this episode, barring all that, the Wild will be in first place outright, at least for a day. Now, some questions that the Wild are going to need to answer with the lineup. So we'll do some debate as to who potentially comes out once Kirill Kaprizov and others are ready to return. We'll talk about that as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after a word from our sponsor, which for today's episode is the official sports betting partner of Locked On. That is FanDuel Sportsbook. And with the NCAA tournament heating up, now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and 3-pointers drained, regardless of if your bracket is toast or not. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Locked On. Continuing today's episode of Locked On Wild, once again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, make sure you check out the Locked On NHL podcast to get the full lowdown on everything going on throughout the wide world of the NHL. Locked On NHL is available on all of your favorite podcast platforms, absolutely free of charge. Continuing to break down the win over the Devils with Jayden Homuth. Jayden, let's talk lineup because Kirill's coming back at some point. Although with how this offense has looked, maybe you don't. I'm kidding. I'm not even going to make the joke. Maybe you don't need him. Yes, of course you do. But it brings up an interesting question because it seems like all of these combos are clicking. Now, Kaprizov's combination, his normal spot being taken by Marcus Foligno tonight, that's probably not one that long-term you would look to have put together. But Johansson, Eriksson, Boldy, on fire. You're not touching that line. The fourth line with Shaw, Dewar, and Reeves, they're on fire. That third line combo of Duhaime, Gaudreau, and Sundqvist has done some really good things. I don't know who comes out because you got to get Kaprizov back in the lineup, but beyond that, you've got Gustav Nyquist waiting in the wings at some point too. So who, if you had to, how would you put things together here for this team? We'll start on offense, then we'll talk about defense too, because didn't have Jared Spurgeon tonight, but you will going forward. So let's start with the offense. Let's assume that Kaprizov and Nyquist are healthy. Who do you pull?
That's a question. Man, you got to put, obviously you got Kaprizov, Hartman, Zuccarello, first line, second line set. If I had to pull someone for Kaprizov, I don't know. But if I had to pull someone for Nyquist come playoff time, I think I'll get hate for this, but I think it would have to be Dewar. In my mind, Dewar and Shaw are two excellent penalty killers, but Gustav Nyquist is also a very, very, very good penalty killer. So it breaks up the bromance, but you have someone who's just as good penalty killing and can also produce more. I think Shaw is a better penalty killer than Dewar, so I don't think you can take him out. But again, who comes out when Kaprizov comes? It might have to be Shaw because, playoff hockey, you really don't want Reeves to be up in the press box for that. So it's going to be, feelings are going to be hurt. Fans are going to be mad. Two people are going to have to come out because you can't sit Nyquist and you cannot sit Kaprizov.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be tough, but at the same time, this team is in a much better spot than even last year's was with the depth that they've put together. You've got legitimately like 5 line combinations you could put together and you could feel good about throwing out there on the ice. Only 4 of them are going to play. And so if it does come down to, because here's the other thing, is I thought Foligno looked good tonight. He just offensively is not, he's not going to necessarily be able to do the same things.
He's not Kaprizov.
Right. Yeah. But I thought he played his style of hockey in himself well tonight. He was throwing his body around a ton. He was being kind of that behind the net physical guy to get the puck out, dislodge, all those sorts of things that he does on a nightly basis. So I think it's safe to say that he's back to where he was earlier in the season. So he's obviously going to play. Hartman's going to play, obviously. Zuccarello's going to play, obviously. That second line, you're not touching them unless some sort of extraterrestrial force removes one of them from the equation for the rest of the season. You're not touching that line.
Mm-hmm.
So it is going to have to be somebody. And it's not going to be an easy choice. As the president of the Brandon Duhaime fan club, I'm obligated to keep him in the lineup. Although he's playing like a guy that deserves to. Like,
He
all
doesn't
these
come out.
guys are playing so well that it's going to be a tough choice, but it's players that are going to make this lineup better by getting in.
I could maybe hold up before I get to this. Being Minnesota Wild fans and being with the team, you know that things don't go the way they're supposed to go. The Dallas Stars tied the Seattle Kraken with 0.07 seconds left, and they are now going to overtime. So first place was very short-lived. Dallas got a point. But back to what I was saying, I think I just thought about it. I guess the one player you could say he has been producing points, but Oscar Sundqvist maybe could come out just because he is slower. It's visible, but he is a very good offensive minded player. But if you need to put someone like Nyquist in, I think you pick Nyquist over Sundqvist, and then you have a line of Freddie Gaudreau, Brendan Duhaime, and Gustav Nyquist, which I don't think anybody complains about.
No, and that's why I'm kind of hoping that Nyquist gets back in with a few games left before the season's over, so we can see what we've got with him, and try to kind of put him in with a couple different line combinations. Now, before you ruined my day, let's talk about the defense, because Spurgeon's obviously going to come back in, and so you have the conundrum of, does Alex Goligoski come out, or does recent scratch John Merrill come out? Because he got called for 2 penalties against Boston. He probably should have been called for a couple against the Devils, but didn't. And so do you maybe go John Merrill as the guy who draws the short straw once Spurgeon is ready to return?
I would think so. It would have to be between Goligoski and Merrill, in my opinion. Goligoski did have a trip tonight, and Merrill obviously had a clean penalty game, even though the refs kind of swallowed their whistles on that last, what I was assuming was a trip. But I think it would have to be Merrill, because Goligoski's been playing well offensively too, and you don't want to remove any type of offense off this team, especially when we're on this heater right now, scoring wise. So I think when Spurgeon's back, it would have to be Merrill.
Yeah.
And then you have.
No, I was just going to say, I agree, because again, guys are playing well, and it's not going to be an easy choice, whoever it ends up being.
Yeah, I think that you go with the Spurgeon, Middleton pair, Brodin, Dumba, and Klingberg, Goligoski, and the Kraken just won in overtime. So we're tied with Dallas, at least.
Okay, I'll take that. I'm glad this all happened in real time so that we could see the wave of emotions that that I went through on Dallas tying the game with 2 empty net goals. Hideous.
And if I'm not wrong, I think that we will stay in first place tonight because we have the even number of games played, but we have more wins. So I think that we will be still in first place.
I like it. That's fine with me, just as long as we get it for more than like 10 minutes. But it is interesting, and it is something that, with all of the players playing as well as they have, there's been a lot of chatter about a particular player down in Iowa who is lighting the world on fire. And I was thinking about it as this episode goes on. I think we are going to go there when we return. So we'll we'll talk about Mr. Rossi as he is continuing to be on just an absolute heater for the Iowa Wild. So we'll talk about why he's not here now when we continue today's episode of Locked on Wilds after this. Are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want all of the fat and calories? Well, you had better give Built Bar a try. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. Plus, they also come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I don't know how Built Bar continues to get it done, but these bars are their healthiest yet. They contain just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. Best of all is you no longer need to wait for your Built Bars to arrive. You can head to your local Walmart or Sam's Club to get yourself a box and get your snacking started immediately. If you don't have one close by, you can always head to built.com and order yourself a box. And then once they arrive, you've got your favorite snack at your fingertips. Regardless of which way you choose, make sure that you choose Built Bar today. Final segment of today's episode of Locked on Wilds. Once again, thanks for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Seth Topal joined by Jayden Homuth. And yeah, we're going to go there because there has been a lot of chatter on Twitter about, well, this team is playing as good as they have been all season. Marco Rossi is just lighting it up down in Iowa. He had a hat trick, I think, in one of his most recent games. And so how come he's not up here? Why have we not seen Mr. Rossi? And I hope the tone here doesn't sound condescending because I think we're just going to talk about, why it is that he has not drawn the call up yet to be part of this Wild roster at this point.
I think that the main reason that he is not up here right now is because of how well he's doing in Iowa. You've seen it before with Adam Beckman. He'll tear up Iowa and they'll call up Joseph Cramarosa instead of Adam Beckman. It's something that Dean and Tim like to do where they he's growing right now and you want to keep him down there. They called up Walker. Walker's an extra right now. You don't want to call up Rossi just to sit. Rossi, sorry. You don't want to call up Rossi just to sit and watch games. You want him to continue doing what he's doing. And I don't think he has a problem with getting top line minutes down in the AHL and scoring every game. And for the people that want him up here right now, that would be a mistake right now, pulling him out of success and throwing him into a playoff push. I don't think that he needs that right now. And I think that he's doing fine where he's at and he's going to be up here soon and he's going to be very good soon. There's no reason to try and rush a process with a player that's going to be on this team for years to come.
Yeah, you're spot on. There is the potential, yes, that if he was called up, that he would continue to produce at the level that he is. Sure, that is a possibility that could happen. It could be that he is finally kind of, I say finally for a guy who is like 21 years old, has just his entire NHL career in front of him. There is a chance that he has figured some things out at the AHL level that will translate, but I just wonder about what happens if not. Let's say he comes up here and has like 1 or 2 games in a row of no points. At that point, the pressure is going to be applied of, well, he was scoring at Iowa. How come he's not scoring up here now? It's a situation where the Wilds have figured it out offensively. They've been winning games despite not scoring goals earlier in the season. They've been winning games with what they have. And I think it's just a perfect scenario for him to not have any undue pressure on him by being able to just focus on helping that Iowa team get to the playoffs. If he comes up here you're not going to supplant Ryan Hartman. You're not going to supplant Joel Eriksson-Ek. So then he's at the same point that he was to start the season, and that's not best utilizing him and his skill set. It's just his best opportunity right now is to get as many minutes as possible down in Iowa, to continue to cultivate and build, and there will be an opportunity that will arise for him in that top 6, and when he does, he'll take it and he'll run with it. But for right now, that top 6 opportunity just isn't there, and he is not a third or a fourth line guy.
Yeah, and I look at this scenario with the Mayhew scenario that was going on for a couple of years, where Mayhew would be down in Iowa leading the whole AHL in scoring and would rarely get the call up here and wouldn't do nothing up here. And it went on for too long, and then eventually he tested free agency, didn't want to be here anymore, went with Philadelphia, and now you don't hear nothing of him. And I don't think Rossi is going to be a Mayhew at all, but I feel like Mayhew, who was older, kind of had that noise around him where, oh, he's producing in Iowa. Why is he not in Minnesota? And he would come to Minnesota, go 2 games without a point, and everyone would be like, why is he in Minnesota? He should be in Iowa. We don't want him up here. And I think that takes tolls on players, and that will make a player want to leave eventually, and Mayhew left. But I think that everybody just needs to be patient, and he's coming. You don't need to rush it. Our team's doing fine now. We're not lacking depth right now. By all means, we're not lacking any depth. We don't need to worry about that. And let's just let the kid grow.
Yeah. If this was a season more mirroring what is going on with the St. Louis Blues right now, where they have fallen out of the playoff picture and are not going to make it, then yeah, I would be questioning why the opportunity is not there to come up and to get some opportunities at the end of the year to Cook to do his thing. But that is not the case with this team. Tied for first place. Thanks for nothing, Seattle. Tied for first place with 11 games to play. Let the roster that has done it and continues to do it be the ones to get this group to the postseason. They're going to need him within the next couple of seasons. That opportunity is going to be there. And I don't want to ride the bike without the training wheels, without having ridden it with the training wheels first.
Yeah. You either got to want Rossi or you want it to playoffs. And I think most fans want the playoffs, because if this team stayed in that slide after the All-Star break and just went down and down and down, you trade Greenway, you probably trade Hartman, you try to get Dumb out. Then you got players like Rossi and Beckman, and they're all playing right now, Walker. And then you're in a situation like St. Louis, who fell out of the playoffs, and now you're just trying to grow your young guys in the NHL, and we have all these picks now, and you're in a rebuild, but we're not in a rebuild. So like you said, you let the roster that's winning continue to win. And there's no reason to sit someone like Dewar or Gaudreau just to put Rossi in there because he's producing in the AHL. I don't see it happening. He's growing. Let it be. Both teams are having success right now. Rossi's having success. There's no one on this team, like we talked about earlier in the episode, that deserves to sit. So why would you pull an NHL caliber guy? Not saying Rossi's not NHL caliber. I believe wholeheartedly he is. But it's the same thing. We're discussing who's going to sit when Kaprizov and Nyquist comes back. Now you throw a whole line of people coming back in there. Then you got to subtract the whole line from this team that's winning, and that just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I think the optics of the whole thing, if that situation earlier in the season is handled any better than it was, it's probably not a conversation that's going on right now. But at the end of the day, it's a business that is measured on winning and losing. And so Dean Evison and Bill Guerin are going to war with the lineup they have to win as many games as they can. And this is a team that over the last couple of seasons has been carrying around money that they can't spend. and is still finding a way to win a ton of games. Like they're at 94 wins over the last 2 seasons with like $12 million that they can't spend. So they're finding a way to do it. And so his time will come. But at this point, this situation being what it is right now is the way that it should be. So
100%.
That's where we'll leave it for today. That'll wrap up another elite episode of Locked on Wilds. If you missed anything that we discussed earlier in the week, make sure you check out all the episodes that we've had so far. We talked about the path to the playoffs for the Minnesota Wild. We also have talked about plenty of other things. So make sure that you subscribe if you have not already at Locked on Wild on YouTube and on your favorite podcast platforms. We've got you covered with pre- and post-game content, full episodes, and more. So make sure you stay up to date with new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.